Hey guys, and welcome to the first in a mini-series that I've decided to do on Airbnb hosting, management and investing. My name's Gareth. I'm founder of Placer, which is a platform that connects Airbnb hosts with brands for the purposes of product placement. We work with brands such as Royal Doulton, Oatly, Lavazza Coffee, Manulife, brands such as these who want to place their products into Airbnbs around the UK and internationally to reach their guests. We enable brands to drive trial at scale, so guests can try their products in an environment where they're open to new experiences, like when they're on holiday. So I realised when working at Placer, we've been sitting on a bit of a treasure trove of our host network. Our hosts are from around the UK. Many run successful Airbnb businesses with not just one, but several in their portfolio. Some manage Airbnbs on behalf of others. Many are property investors investing in the properties to then rent out on Airbnb or Booking.com or any of the sort of platforms. So they have some real valuable insight into how to make the most of any investment in the holiday let space. And I thought it would be interesting to take a deep dive into that and talk to them about how they built their successful Airbnb businesses for the benefits of the community. So without further ado, I've got Dainius, who runs a company called Stay in London. Stay in London are a host management agency, obviously based in London. Dainius manages a portfolio of, I believe, over 10 Airbnb properties in London, alongside some long-term lets as well. We've been working with Dainius at Placer for a little while on some of our campaigns, and I thought he would have some really good insight for people who are looking potentially to take the plunge into holiday let investing or to actually put their property on Airbnb. Without further ado, I'll introduce Dainius. So hi, Dainius. Thanks for joining us today. As you know, we're trying to get your experience, some guidance for Airbnb hosts and potential Airbnb investors as well. As somebody that's worked in the industry for a long while, we're hoping to uncover some good tidbits and advice on people looking to kind of enter the Airbnb management and investment space.
Sure, sounds good. Hi everyone.
So yeah, I mean, the idea is to start off with a funny story and end with a funny story. So I sent you over the questions in time, so hopefully you've got some good ones. I'm sure there's some juicy ones.
Sure.
Starting off with your funniest guest story.
So I guess the first one is actually not a guest. It's actually our photographer. So we work with a photographer who. So professional photographer who does takes photographs of the properties that are new on the market. And sometimes if the owner's not there, they leave the keys in the lockbox. So actually, she went to the property, opened the lockbox, went and took pictures of the apartment to find out later on that actually the neighbor also does Airbnb and they have the same lockbox code. So she actually took photographs of the wrong apartment. It was neatly arranged, so she didn't even have a doubt that it's the right one. So it was quite funny because the owner later on discovered that they had the wrong photographs. So yeah, I thought that was quite But actually, apparently they needed new photographs. The ones that they had on the listing were not great, so they were kind of happy, and they actually paid the photographer for the work. So that's really good.
It worked out well then. I bet they were like, who's this apartment here?
Yeah.
Awesome. So what's in terms of you're running a company called Stay in London, and you manage Airbnb listings on behalf of hosts for a kind of a fee. So just a bit of background on Stay in London and like how you got into the industry.
Sure. So prior to starting Stay in London in 2016, over 6 years ago now, I actually used to work for one of the big guys, a company called Host. They used to be called Assorted previously, as a runner initially. They were growing massively at the time. And, they're one of the large management companies in London. They, have in the excess of 1,000 properties that they look after. So that was an introduction to the industry for me a little bit. And I discovered that also this kind of uncontrolled growth for guests and for hosts as well and property owners. And, that's where the idea came from. I thought, you know what, I can quite likely do this better. So I set up Stay in London as a boutique, as a small agency that focuses, of course, on, the experience for the guest, but very importantly, also focuses on the experience of the host and property owner. And I think there's a lot of, questions that they have, especially if they're a new host, if they've not done this before, they're handing over their home and they want to be sure that somebody's gonna, be there for them, look after the property. And, the big guys, they have a switchboard somewhere, you call, you get a different person each time. I think they lack the confidence, I think, very often. So that's why I've set up Stay in London to address that issue and not forget the host experience, not just focusing on the people who are traveling and renting these properties. So yeah, that was that.
Yeah, because the hosts are your ultimate client, right? I mean, obviously you have to manage the guest experience on their behalf, but you're effectively managing properties on behalf of the host, correct?
Exactly, absolutely. And I think recently, in the recent years, Airbnb as a platform, one of the largest platforms globally, I think they have forgotten the fact that without hosts, without these property owners, they wouldn't really have a business. And I'm trying to really address that issue and help the hosts feel safe, secure, and informed, and have the confidence that somebody's really looking after their property and managing it properly. Yeah.
Do you find that some hosts feel that they can almost do it better themselves, or what are the pain points for hosts when you're trying to get new business?
Sure. So I always say, and that's my top tip for Airbnb hosts, is that you can really easily try it yourself, especially in the beginning. The app is really, really smooth. The way it's, you can set up your property really easily. Everybody has a smartphone these days. Take some pictures and you can definitely do trial, see how the communication works, see what questions guests have. So definitely you don't need to hire a third party, a management company to do it for you. But very often, if, for longer periods of time, especially if hosts, they don't live in the same country, if they're in a different time zone, there's all of the issues of communication. So my clients, many of them, they don't live in London and they live abroad or they travel extensively. So they can't be there all the time. And also it can become quite time consuming because people will have all sorts of questions. They will ask you, where, how to take the rubbish out, I don't know, how does the TV work and where the Hoover is, small things. So you have to be there for them. You have to respond quickly. And I think this is the first, issue that we solve for the hosts, is that we are there 24/7, answering the questions and, looking after the day-to-day, running of the property of the apartment.
Yeah,
or house.
Yeah, that brings it on nicely to the next question. I mean, what does a normal day look like for you when you're running the business and managing properties on behalf of the hosts?
Sure. So, we spend a lot of time communicating with the guests, and not just while they're there. I think there's quite a bit of work that goes into this prior to the arrival. So explaining to them how to get to the property, asking them what time they will arrive. Very often people want to check in early or check out late. So discussing all of these details so that they know exactly what's going to happen while they're there. Also, we provide lots of information about what they can do around the property. Very often these people, it's the first time in London, so they don't know much about, how things operate, how things work. We have lots of people coming from United States, for example, Canada, Australia, all over the world. And, for many of them, it's the first time in the country. So we spend a lot of time actually making sure that they know where the property is. They know all of the, amenities and, just to try and make their experience of staying at one of those apartments or houses that we look after as smooth as possible. And then, of course, during their stay, we also, we're there to answer any questions. And once they're left, also, we plan the housekeeping. Very often we have same day checkout and same day check-in. So we have a very small window to make sure that the property is cleaned, the linen and towels have been changed. We also do small maintenance jobs that are necessary in that short, small time window. So there's a lot of, day-to-day, I would say, operational stuff. But also, we also spend time planning ahead. So opening the dates, making sure the pricing is right. We have seasonal pricing, we have weekend pricing. So also trying to maximize revenue for the property owners, for the hosts. And we do quite a bit of work manually. So we've tried all of these software packages that big, hotel chains use, like Price Labs, for example. But, we've noticed, and from experience, we know that actually doing the pricing manually, when a real person does it, you can actually achieve a better yield than the automated, process or automated systems would do. And, the main reason why the automated systems, are there is because, it would require a very big resource to manage pricing for, let's say, 1,000 apartments. But because we have, less than 50, we have the time and we have the experience to actually do it manually. That's why we're kind of a boutique small agency that focuses on that kind of personal touch. So this is what we do. And of course, we physically visit the properties. Sometimes the property owner would ask us to do, I don't know, to take pictures of meter readings, or I don't know, water the plants, that kind of thing. So we do these spot checks at least once or twice a month, just to make sure everything is fine, there's no damage. We report back to the owner, send some pictures just to keep them at ease, just to keep them happy that they know that everything is fine with their property.
So it seems like Airbnb hosts can dip their toe in initially, but then as things start to pick up and they get more and more guests, it seems like there's so many factors to take care of. And not only that, as somebody, so yourselves obviously have the experience in the market. You've been letting properties on Airbnb and other platforms for years and years, so you know how to adjust the pricing accordingly to get the best yield. So you're kind of adding value there as well. So you're taking the hassle out of it, and you're adding value in terms of trying to improve the yield through your experience and understanding of the market, right?
Yes, absolutely. But it still doesn't mean that anyone who owns a property in London or anywhere in the country shouldn't try it themselves. I think it's very easy to do it these days with the app, and you can access everything through your phone. I think people shouldn't be afraid to try it themselves, start their journey, and start a few guests themselves. And then if they see everything's working, if they see everything, they're happy, they can hire an agent to kind of do it for them in the long run.
Definitely. And in terms of that, what's your top tip for Airbnb hosts then?
Give it a go. There's lots of information. So for example, I've joined it's called Airbnb Superhost Forum on Facebook, for example, where basically hosts and property managers companies, they just share positive, sometimes also negative experiences. So also there's lots of information before anyone starts. If they have any doubts, they can just read about this, about other hosts' experience in forums and other kind of sources of information. There's plenty to kind of to answer any questions you might have. For example, the hosts in the United States, they spend a lot of time actually preparing the property. They have hampers that they leave for guests, all kinds of additional things that sometimes you think, wow, this is amazing what they do. And also examples of properties, how they set them up, how they make sure that it's super comfortable for the guests, things like that. So my top tip: research and give it a go and give it a shot.
Right. So obviously, I think it can be a bit nerve-wracking then. I mean, if you're kind of going into this for the first time, you're worried about what guests might do to the property. I think you've kind of started off with, potentially looking at these forums to find out kind of the worst of what can happen and how to maybe mitigate that. And then obviously kind of using somebody like yourself or an agency like yourself who's probably experienced that and can mitigate it themselves on your behalf. But if you're kind of looking at getting into Airbnb investing now or investing in an Airbnb, what's your opinion on the state of the short-term rental market in the UK and also in London, which is where you kind of specialize?
Sure, absolutely. So I think what has happened during the pandemic is that lots of Airbnbs, especially in London, but all across the UK, they've been converted to longer, long-term tenancies. And what we've noticed is that these contracts, they haven't run out. Some of them were 12 months, others probably 24 months. And lots of these properties that were essentially taken off the Airbnb market, they've not really come back. And at the same time, the demand has come back to pre-pandemic levels and more actually at the minute. So there's lots of demand and not enough supply. So we are noticing, price increases of 30, 40, up to 50% versus the pre-pandemic. Of course, part of it is inflation, but still, it's quite a significant increase in an average nightly rate. If you compare it to 2 years ago, and I think this is why it's a great opportunity if you want to trial it. I've had a few calls actually recently where people only are going away for a month. So they've decided that they will trial it. They will just trial it while they're away. They are just looking, for maybe 2-3 guests that are going to stay in that period of time with, let's say, a minimum 7-night kind of length of stay. And, they're looking to trial it because the market is super hot. There's a big demand for Airbnbs, for short-term rentals in London and all across the UK. And I think, there wasn't a better time than now to trial it and to test it.
Right, that's interesting because obviously I think a lot of people might be a bit nervous in terms of where the market's going in the next sort of 6 months to a year, maybe even longer. Obviously, with the kind of Bank of England interest rate rises and potentially increasing mortgage rates, inflation eating away at people's disposable income. But you're saying effectively because of COVID, there was a reduction in supply as people were putting what were short-term holiday lets, and they were renting them longer term, and those just haven't come back on the market effectively. So there's still that imbalance between supply and demand. So it's kind of a good time to be investing. Absolutely.
And what we also shouldn't forget is London is not just a travel tourism destination. It's also a big financial and business center. So very often, we've noticed corporate clients staying in Airbnbs for, an extended period of time. We're talking about weeks or sometimes even months, because they don't want to stay in a hotel where you have, 15 square meters. They want to have more space, especially if they're staying for a longer period of time. So, not just tourism. And actually London has the highest number of Airbnbs anywhere in Europe. So more than Paris. So it is definitely the biggest market, a very competitive market, but huge. So there's lots of opportunities. So yes, nobody knows what's going to happen in 6 months. But I think, London always recovers very quickly, and there's always been demand. Even during the pandemic, we've had people who were stuck. They couldn't come back to their own country, and, they needed somewhere to stay when the hotels were closed. So, I think there's always opportunities, and for hosts, I think it's a great way to kind of to add to their income or to fill up the gaps when they're traveling themselves. And as an investment, it's a sound investment. People wouldn't be doing it, And if we're talking about, for example, an average return, we're talking, probably up to 10%. So I think, and it's safe investment as well, because, property in London, even though prices, can go down, but if you look at, 10, 15, 20 years, it's just on the up always. So you're never going to lose out in shares, and has, a great possibility for a good return.
Definitely. And that 10%, I mean, is that after fees and everything included, or?
Yes, yes. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Does that include capital return as well?
That's capital return. So again, you'd have to look at each specific property. So, if you, for example, buy in the most expensive postcodes, I don't know if you're buying in Kensington and Chelsea or Westminster, for example, that's probably going to be lower. But I think I would probably say that's an average, all across London. This is what you could expect in a property that is, set up nicely, and, we know it's going to work well for short-term stays. So, there's lots of aspects that need to be taken into account. It has to be, close to transport links, has to be, kitted out very nicely. It has to have nice furniture, space, especially if it has, something that's non-standard. So I don't know, outside space or roof terrace, or I don't know, access to communal gym, or I don't know, swimming pools sometimes in bigger blocks. So if you have those kind of things, this is what you could expect overall after capital investment, essentially. So that's the numbers that we're looking at.
That's a very good return, and that's probably better than the stock market right now. So in terms of London, you know London better than anyone else. You mentioned a few kind of factors that you look at there. Where do you think the best areas to invest in London are right now?
So, for example, we've noticed quite a lot of increase in demand after the extension of the Northern Line has opened up. So areas like around Battersea Park, for example, in southwest London, which was kind of, for example, if you're coming for 3-4 nights, you need to be close to transport links. So I guess that area wasn't as popular before with tourists. and that's why people weren't really like looking into converting their long-term properties into Airbnbs in that area. But now, with the extension of the tube line, there's a lot of opportunity, I think, there. But also places like King's Cross, for example, if I've been in London for ages, so I remember 10, 15 years ago, it was not a very welcoming area. And now, with all the investment and then the kind of development in that area, it's become very attractive. There's lots of restaurants, amazing transport links. Previously, you couldn't even, it was not an international train station. Now you can go to Paris from King's Cross. So, things like that, I think, and price-wise, again, it wasn't as expensive a few years ago. It is becoming more expensive now. I think it has kind of already. So maybe, if you look at the price level, it's probably quite expensive now. But, I think kind of like with any investment, you have to look at what's going to be up and coming in a year or two. And invest in those areas, which will be, more popular in the future. So I would probably say I probably wouldn't invest in the most expensive postcodes. I think it's just, it's the price level you're looking at is probably going to be way higher that you could, that the property would cost in another area. But I would look at something that's still central, up and coming, with possibilities to expand. So Battersea, King's Cross, Angel, around Angel, Islington, those kind of areas.
Those areas are never going to go down, are they? I mean, they're just always going to do well. Prime London real estate, even in kind of down markets, tends to hold its own, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And another new transport link that's just opened recently is the Elizabeth line. So also, it's very fast. You can travel, especially if you want to go west and east as well. I think it opens up new opportunities for Airbnbs that are not necessarily based in central London, maybe slightly further out. But if they have good transport links, I think they will still be very, they will be in demand.
Brilliant. And then thanks for that. It's been really insightful. Some really good tips there, hopefully for people who are looking to invest potentially in London or the UK, or take a dip into the Airbnb market more generally. But yeah, we'd just like to end on your second funniest guest story, if you would.
Sure. So, like I mentioned at the beginning, some of these, every host, they should be prepared that, certain things will happen. You have to be prepared, and you have to, go into the business, I think, with an open mind. So I guess it's not funny, because thankfully we had in that property we had 2 showers, but actually we had quite recently we had a problem with the shower. Basically, they broke the shower and it nearly flooded the whole apartment. But the guests were, they were kind of joking about it. They said, "Okay, thank God it didn't flood everything." But we were kind of scared a little bit. Okay, it's a block of flats, it's a big building. And when we saw videos, because these days you can take pictures and shoot small videos. But anyway, so it wasn't funny in the beginning, I would say, but at the end we both laughed and we said, okay, we managed to fix it very quickly, and they were super helpful. So that was that. But yeah, I guess hosts, they have to be ready, go into this business with an open mind. Things will happen, but if you have a team that is there for you, that can react quickly, I think everything can be solved. So that would be my kind of the last note in our chat.
That's good. Yeah, it sounds like you've actually got lucky. Some of the stories that I've heard in the press in terms of the parties and all sorts that are kind of going on in Airbnbs, sounds like you've actually got lucky for your clients.
Yeah, I mean, these things are a bit extreme. I think the press also, they want to portray it. They're always looking for something that's a sensational thing. They don't report on hundreds and hundreds of thousands of positive stories, because that's not interesting for people. But I think for most hosts, 99% of experiences are going to be positive. And I think it's a great way to travel as well, and to see a city, to kind of to stay in somebody's home. And I think it's just a great opportunity. So there's definitely more positive experiences than negative overall.
Definitely. Yeah, I don't think it'd be much of a headline if it said Airbnb guest stays and checks out fine. That's
exactly. Yeah, happy leaves a 5-star review. Exactly. Yeah.
Anyway, so no, that was brilliant. Thank you very much for your time, and thanks very much for the insight. And hopefully like I say, people who are looking to invest in the Airbnb space are going to get a lot out of it. So appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for your time. Good to speak to you.
Thanks, Dainius.